Hello, welcome back to the Football Terrace. Hope you're all well and good. Some big stories to speak about this morning. Bukayo Saka's new deal closing in, highly advanced. That coupled with the news just a few days ago that Saliba and a new deal at Arsenal are also upon the horizon. This is big news. Keeping hold of their best assets has probably been one of Arsenal's biggest downfalls in the last 20 years, and that tide has been changing as of late. We're also looking at Ruben Amorim and his supposed plan to bring in two new midfield players. What is this story on the 11th of September after failing, the club failing, not Amorim failing, to bring in two midfielders in the January? Plus, I'm going to be going through my Premier League predictions for the season. Who is going to be the Premier League winner? That will be revealed. My opinion will be revealed on this show. Do me a favor, though, before you go any further, if you would be so kind, please hit that like button. Make sure you are subscribed if you haven't done so already. And if you could turn that bell notification button on as well, that would be massively beneficial to us as a community. It truly would. And I know, look, it's been a horrible 24 hours on social media. And as you know, I don't get political. I don't get into these types of discussions. But I've seen a lot of people on social the last 24 hours. I've had to mute certain words because I didn't want to see videos that are out there. And look, that is almost the tip of the iceberg in many ways. There's horrific, disgusting things going on in the Middle East. There's massive protests planned in the UK this weekend as well, which I've got a horrible feeling could turn nasty. And look, if you're seeing this and it's impacting you, try and take yourself away from social media as best you can. Mute certain words, mute certain topics, because I know it's difficult to sometimes see, especially if you're, like me on my X account, for instance. I only use X, honestly, for football now. So anything like that, I just mute and take away. When it comes to politics, when it comes to my humanitarian and charitable side, that is something I do away from camera. So I know it's been a very tough time for people out there. It really has. But hopefully the next 45 minutes to an hour will it probably won't bring any solace, but hopefully as a slight distraction at the very least. But do me a favor, like and share, subscribe, get your comments in below. Let's do this. Welcome back, everybody. Good morning to the Football Terrace. And look, we will touch more on that subject a little bit later because some big comments coming in relating to football to last night as well. So we'll be talking about that a little bit later in the show. Let me know where you are watching from around the world. It'd be amazing if you could do that for us. I always like to know where my wonderful, my beautiful, fantastic community is tuning in from as well. Plus, I'll put your comments up on there on the screen. You can see them coming up throughout the course of the show. Good morning to ST Boy. I hope you are well. I hope you are good. We've got people watching from Germany. We had the lovely Lou, who I know is watching from, I'm not going to say where in case you don't want to know exactly, but from Ireland, the Emerald Isle. I'm not going to say exactly where. Big up to Poppy, who is in Brisbane. Triple M, who is in South Africa. Love South Africa. And I'm going to be using South Africa later as a point in case to one of the talking points that's going on that little bit later in the show. Hello to Cameron in Australia, where a lot of my family are from. Wonderful country as well. Gigi in Miami. Good morning to Ash, who's from the same place as me, England. Grey and drab. Although it's a very beautiful morning where I am today, very sunny. I could hear this noise just behind my back garden. I went outside and there was these two huge buzzards sitting on these posts outside my house, and they were maybe 15 foot away. And I've noticed in the last year they're getting closer and closer to me as I realize I'm not going to hurt them. I'm not going to do anything. I think they're a little bit. I think they were eyeing my dog up a year ago when he was a puppy and thinking he was food. Now he's 50 kilos. They're like, no, thank you. But yeah, beautiful morning where I was, to be fair. Let's jump into these stories today because we've got a lot to speak about. We're talking Saka and new deals at Arsenal. We're talking Man United's double midfield deal. and we're giving you my honest opinions on that. They might be a bit harsh for some of you. So if you don't like harsh opinions, maybe move on. And just as important as that, I'm going to be revealing my Premier League winner this season as well. I want to get your views and your opinions. But I wanted to start off by talking about Bukayo Saka. And I think that this is maybe some of the biggest news to come out of Arsenal in a long time. And I'm going to tell you why this is big. In fact, it isn't even big. It's absolute. Sorry, I'm just doing one quick thing here on my computer because it's annoying me. Thank you. It's absolutely massive. I can't explain how big this is. It's not about the player's ability. It's not about what he has delivered thus far in an Arsenal shirt. It isn't even about the star name and the salary and the excitement fans get through this news. It's the message that it sends. Now, there's a big rhetoric and narrative surrounding Arsenal this season, which is they must. Arsenal must win the league. Arsenal must win major trophies. And I think sometimes that's used purely as a stick to beat people with. So, for instance, I said, me and Hassam said it to his face yesterday, so I'm not speaking across paths or behind anybody's back. I want to be very clear. But LB said he won't use injuries as an excuse. My belief is LB has pushed so hard at Arsenal saying you can't use injuries, you can't use injuries, you can't use injuries. It's kind of created a bit of a rod for his own back where even when his club has got an injury crisis on, it's I don't care, it's no excuse, we're not good enough to win, I don't care, I'm annoyed. And I almost feel like it's a little bit, I don't mean sad as in he's pathetic, because I think LB's a great guy, we get on very, very well. I just think that we do this to ourselves sometimes on socials where in the pursuit of hammering a rival club, we create a narrative that we maybe don't fully believe in, and it makes us feel a bit crappy about football later on. I think this can happen. Ugh. Well, actually, you have got an injury crisis at the minute, and that would be a legitimate reason to lose the next couple of games, and it would be a legitimate train of thought to say once those players are back, I think that we can improve. It will certainly be easier for Pep to find a solution with those players fit than without them, and that is absolutely fair in my opinion. But I bring that up because I think people create a lot of narratives against Arsenal. Some of them are right, and they're right to push them. I don't necessarily think Arsenal must win the league this year because Arsenal are going to be here in 150 years' time. They want to. Arsenal fans need it. They want to feel that success. But Arteta certainly must. One thing Arsenal have done brilliantly, and we'll bring this back round to Bukayo Saka because there is a point I'm making here, although I do go off on tangents sometimes. When it comes to Bukayo Saka, giving him a new deal, giving Saliba a new deal, the same as Odegaard a couple of years ago. I know he's not been in the best form, but when he was, Gabriel's new deal. And you guys can probably tell me in the comment section other players that have had new deals. Arsenal went for a period from probably the mid-2000s until about 5-6 years ago, where most of their best players, you knew, I knew, and every Arsenal fan around the world knew, would be sold. They either would have a bigger club turn their head, which can still happen because barring Real Madrid, maybe if Man United were at the peak of our powers, there's very few clubs that they look up to. You know, I don't remember the name of the animal, but you remember in the original Avatar when Sully and his missus, they're on those creatures learning how to fly, and so you've got to look out for the big thing that comes down that hunts you. But if you could actually capture that creature, you're looked at as some sort of king. And when he goes and hunts that guy later, that animal later in the movie to kind of gain the respect back of the tribe, you know, he said there's a voice, there's a moment in it where it says, well, how can you sneak up on him? Well, he doesn't look up because nobody ever hunts him. And there's an element like Real Madrid don't look up because no one's really hunting their players per se that they want to keep. Anyway, and I bet loads of you in the comments remember the name of all those animals and stuff better. Yeah, there we go. Taruk Mokhtar. Love that movie, by the way. Like the second one as well, but love the first movie. Amazing. And that's also what happens. Oh, hang on a minute here. There is some breaking news I've been told to go and see. So I'm changing the subject, but we'll come back to the breaking news in a minute. So look, from my point of view and perspective, Arsenal have always had they've always sort of had their pants pulled down with players, heads turned, or the club wouldn't renew contracts at the going rate. Ashley Cole famously said he was promised an amount of money, being the best left back in the world at the time, and Arsenal went back on that. He ends up joining Chelsea. We've seen this go on and on and on. So I think getting someone like Bukayo Saka to sign a new deal, I think getting someone like Bukayo Saka to do a new deal, tie him down to a contract. I think this is so important. And from my point of view and perspective, I think this represents what I've long believed when it comes to Arsenal, that they're on the right path. Now, I know that some Arsenal fans are going, stop talking about paths and journeys. We've got to get over the line. And I understand you want to get over the line. But I'm not emotive about your country. I'm not emotive about your football club. I'm not emotive. I'm not emotional. I'm not connected to it in that way. I'm looking at it very objectively because I have no subjective feelings towards Arsenal. I have respect for them as one of my biggest rivals, but I'm looking at this objectively. Tying down these two players to new deals, I think is so big. I think is so huge. And I think is so fundamentally massive to this game. It cannot be, and it shouldn't be ignored in any capacity whatsoever. Tying Saka down. Look, I know he's had his injury problems this last year, but I'm pretty confident he's going to get back to somewhere near his best, if not his complete best. Tying him down means you have him, you have his playing ability, you have all of that at your disposal. All of that at your disposal. What you're then able to do with that is then one of two things. He either plays for you, delivers for you, gives you what you need, or if someone does turn his head because he's renewed that contract, you are going to get mega money. Something Arsenal have not been good at doing in the years is selling for large amounts of money to reinvest into their squad. And I think the same thing can be said for William Saliba as well. I think it's very, very important to have that done. So look, I think this is massive, massive news for Chelsea, for Arsenal in every single which way. And I think that it's one of these things where when we look at this, when we break this down, when we talk about this in years to come, these could be the moments that Arsenal fans look back at and say, this was so significant in our growth. This was so important in us getting back to that next level. The must element is on Arteta now. Arteta has a squad good enough to win the league. He's getting all of his best players. Whether you like them or not is irrelevant for a moment. He's getting the players he wants, contracts renewed. He's keeping his stars. They're paying them the going rate. That, for me, is what should bring that pressure. That, for me, is what should bring the noise in many ways. That is for what, in my opinion, is what should be creating the excitement amongst Arsenal fans, but the expectation upon the manager to deliver. I think that is fundamentally important at every single level. And, you know, Arteta does have a lot to prove now. He's built the club, and I think you can compartmentalize. He rebuilt the club. It was broken. He stripped it back with Edu and the owners and the board. They rebuilt it part by part by part. You know, imagine like a race car falling apart, can't finish races. They took it apart. They stripped it back down. They went backwards in where they were finishing whilst they were fixing it because it wasn't ready. But they've got it to a point now where it is championship ready. You've got to get it over the line. You've got to deliver in that way. And the second that Arsenal start doing that, I think you'll see a different mood from Gunas. But that pressure is on Mikel Arteta because Bukayo Saka, again, is another movement, is another milestone in terms of the way Arsenal have developed and changed. But that is why I understand the pressure upon them to win titles. So look, give me your views, give me your opinions in the comments section below, people. Would love to hear from you on that. Now, yes, subscribe as well. Make sure you've got all that done. Thank you, people. Now, massive breaking news since we have been live that I'm going to jump into now. I haven't got all of the details in front of me, but the FA have, and I believe this, I need to make sure I read this correctly. Let me just get this up in front of me now because this is massive breaking news that Chelsea have been charged with 76 breaches of FA regulations, the football agents regulations, the FA regulations on working intermediaries, the FA third-party investment into player regulations. The charges cover misconduct that allegedly took place between 2009 and 2022, mainly between 2010 and 2016. So they have now been formally charged. A lot of this is probably in connection to what they self-reported, if that makes sense. But far more charges than I think many of us expected, and some of them have come as late as 2022. So I want to get your instant reactions to that, please, people. Let me just update a few bits and pieces on my screen in front of me right now so I can get the right information. We're going to be taking some calls on that as well, because that is gargantuan news this morning. People are sort of waiting really for what is going to happen to Chelsea here. And although some Chelsea fans I can see playing it down, this is not new news, we knew this was coming, etc. This is massive. This is absolutely massive in every single which way. I don't think you can hide from that. It's huge to be charged in this way for all these breaches. And we know what this relates to if it's for the self-reporting, because you've self-reported it and the information is kind of already out there in the public domain, as it were. And I do think that this is massive news. It really is. We're going to go into it in just a second. I'm just updating a few bits and pieces on the screen in front of me. Bear with me a second while I get some more of this information up. But I want your views. I want your opinions on this story, on this subject, because I think it's something that is of massive interest to everybody. But I also think it's something that is, again, it's something we've all been waiting for a long time now, to see what would happen. Not for Chelsea to be charged per se, but what would the outcome of this investigation be? So I'm going to go and try and source some additional information on that, because annoyingly, just from a YouTuber perspective, this all broke just before I went live, which is annoying. So it might change the course of this show somewhat as we move forward. Let me just update a few bits and pieces, because I know people are going to talk about that now. Bear with me. Wow. Someone here says there's nothing special. It happens at every club because it's Chelsea. It's breaking. But why are Chelsea fans saying that? How do we know this happens at every club? Like, honestly, don't just blindly. Oh, that's your football club. You're going to defend it, aren't you? But that's crazy news. Crazy news indeed. Let me just update the title of the video as well, because that is absolutely crazy. Seeking more information, really. Any news reports here? Breaking news: Chelsea have been hit with, but they haven't really gone into much detail on what these mean specifically. I'll hear. Okay, so here's something that's new that's come out. Chelsea have been issued with 74 charges alleging breaching of their regulations on football agents working with intermediaries and player party ratings ranging from up to 2022. Do we have any more information than that as of right now? But it does appear that it's in connection. Okay, oh no, that's that's not to do with this particular thing. Martin Ziegler here. Yeah, no, it's terrible news. Like, the majority of these rule breaches came in the Roman Abramovich era, but as we know, that a lot of these allegations relate to the situations, for instance, with a lot of these allegations relate to the situations with Samuel Eto'o, Eden Hazard, where the accusations, they were self-reported by Chelsea, that agents and intermediaries connected to the players were paid exorbitant amounts of money off the books. So they breached, they basically circumvented PSR and FFP by paying people off the books via the back door, via offshore means, rather than putting it through Chelsea's books, because Chelsea, essentially, what the accusation is that Chelsea wouldn't have been able to have afforded to have bought the players they did in this period. And remember, this period covers their first Champions League. This period covers multiple major trophies. And of course, just like the accusations that have been thrown towards Manchester City, that must be discussed, that must be spoken about, that must be detailed, is they were winning trophies in that time, but they were also building that foundation. And let's just go through it here. In the time that the allegations took place, They've won 2 Premier Leagues. They have won 2 FA Cups. They've won the League Cup. They've won the Champions League twice in that period, because it's up to 2022. Champions League twice, Europa League twice, World Club Cup twice in that time, Super Cup once in that time. And for me, we have to keep the same energy for Chelsea as we did for Manchester City. And that is that at the moment, these are charges. They have not been found guilty. I think that is fundamentally important that we remember that at this moment, as of right now, at this moment, these are charges. 74 charges for breaching, as stated via the FA. Player, I'm going to make sure I read these correctly because I don't want to misrepresent this on my screen. Charges relating to regulations under football agents, working with intermediaries, third-party investments in players. These essentially go back to the allegations that Chelsea self-reported a number of years ago now, that there were off-the-book offshore payments made via the likes of Roman Abramovich to the agents and coaches and intermediaries for players such as Samuel Eto'o, such as Eden Hazard. It does now appear there might be even more, as we're seeing 74 breaches for these rules and regulations. It's important they're investigated thoroughly. It's important that they're assessed, because major success happened for Chelsea in that period. Success that I can only speak for myself here. I never bemoaned Chelsea having money to spend. I never bemoaned Roman and the way he operated. I never bemoaned the transfer records that they broke. I never bemoaned the way they changed the transfer landscape. I looked at it as a challenge. I looked at it as something for Man United, as a United fan, to go after. And we did, and we beat Chelsea. We did a 3-peat. We beat them in a Champions League final. Fergie stopped them from becoming the dominant force they wanted to be. On a competitive football level, I sort of loved it. However, if they have then agreed to PSR rules, FFP rules, if they have then broken those regulations by paying people off the books, if they have broken rules and regulations if it comes to tapping players, and I'm speculating here, but I'm giving you examples, I'm giving you a hypothesis. If they've been tapping up players, misusing intermediaries, if there's third-party owners, investments in players where they're breaching those rules, if they're paying off, bribing, or making offshore payments, off-the-book payments to agents to convince players to come, they're circumventing those rules. Every single bit of success that has happened during that period and since, because you build that foundation. You build that foundation. You have those assets. Where would Chelsea have been without Eden Hazard? And who else knows what other players are going to come into this? It must be taken seriously. Now, some people will say this is old news. This is not old news. Do not believe that flannel. Do not believe that nonsense. Do not believe that bullshit. This is not new news. Yes, we know Chelsea self-reported. But if you go back and find those articles, and I'll go and find them now, Chelsea reports themselves. I don't know how to Google search this. I'm going to put in Eto'o and I'm going to put in Hazard. We'll probably find these articles from a year or so ago. Let's have a little look here. Yeah, Chelsea hope for financial deal with the Premier League is what they were looking for over secret payments. So we go back, and this article came out in January 2025. During the takeover process in 2022, Todd Bowley and Clearlake discovered irregularities in the takeover process in May 22 and reported them to the Premier League. So it's very unlikely that any of the transactions in the last 3 years, 3 or 4 years, fall under this since Clearlake took over. But of course, there is a foundation that has been built within this. The players mentioned in this original report were Eden Hazard, Samuel Eto'o, and Willian. Okay, 3 exceedingly influential, especially Willian and Hazard, in the successes of Chelsea Football Club. But it's what that foundation built them: maintaining Champions League positions, winning trophies, prize money, sponsorships, the additional funds that bring in. Now, what are the 74 charges and breaches in relation to? Is this a case of 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 per player, 20 per player, 30 per player? Or is this 3 or 4 charges per player and we're looking at 10, 12, 15, 30 different players? How often did this happen? How many more irregularities have been found? This is a conversation that, again, has to be had. Football fans have to look at this. Football fans have to push back at this. Have to. Because at the end of the day, whether people like this or not, this is serious. This is massive. This is groundbreaking. And just as we've discussed, if these allegations are proven, if these charges for breaches are convictable, and listen, there's a chance here they're more convictable than City's, because Chelsea Football Club have reported themselves. Okay? Now, look, what Chelsea have done, though, is a little different. They have essentially grasped themselves up. What Chelsea Football Club have done, have handed themselves in. What Chelsea Football Club have done to a large degree is pleaded guilty and said, look, we're the new owners. Clearlake and Todd Bowley, we're the new owners. We found these irregularities. We know regulations coming in soon. We know that a governing body is going to start to regulate football clubs. We found these irregularities. What we didn't want to do is what other clubs have done. And there probably are others out there that have done this, haven't been found. We're going to brush it under the carpet. We're going to hide it. Just for one day, the regulators to come in, to find this out, and for you to punish us. What we're looking for is to communicate. And I'm sure you're going to see a statement from Chelsea very soon. By the time you're watching this video, it might have already happened. Chelsea are going to end up issuing some kind of statement where they're going to say, we're pleased to have had professional and courteous and engaging conversations with the FA. We are working with them fully. We self-reported. We're looking forward to reaching a conclusion. Chelsea will push that narrative, and they will be hoping that the outcome is favorable because they have handed themselves in. But what cannot be ignored, and I don't think this even matters from a what's the punishment front, it's the court of public opinion. And for me, this is huge. This is significant. In fact, this is absolutely massive, because from my point of view and from my perspective, I look at this as, what did this help you win? We need the facts. The same as when Man City's results come out. When City's results come out, if they are innocent and this was a witch hunt, I'll condemn the Premier League and any club that was pushing for this, including my own. I'll say that was wrong and that is disgusting, because fans are connected to that club. If it turns out they cheated, we need to know the severity. We need to know by how much. What did that enable them to buy? What potentially would their squads have looked like if they weren't able to pump in this money that's being alleged? Because if they've cheated, but they pumped in an additional 30 million over 10 years, I don't think it's made a great deal of difference. If they've pumped in over £1 billion of revenue in 10 years, and that lack of £1 billion would have led to the squad being half as good, it's a different conversation. The same conversation has to now be pushed by football fans regarding Chelsea. And this isn't a witch hunt. This is seeking the truth. If Chelsea had done it with 2 or 3 players, and that's all this relates to, and they've cooperated, and the majority of their squad would have still been there, then maybe they could have afforded the players anyway, but they might have had a little fine on FFP or PSR. I'm not saying it's no big deal, but that is a far cry from they broke these rules to sign half a squad. In fact, half a squad, it was the core group that led to Premier League, Champions League, FA Cup wins that led to them generating hundreds of millions in revenue that gave them the foundation to have what they're doing now. I look at it as something's got to be done, even with cooperation. Now, maybe the fines and the punishments are less because they've cooperated, and that makes sense. I expect if Chelsea and City are both found guilty, I expect Chelsea to get a lesser punishment because they've cooperated. That works in criminal law, civil law, right across the board. The more cooperative you are, the more you speak, the more information you give, especially if you help build a RICO, you often get away with a lot more. But it's the historical factors. Will we still recognize Chelsea as having those Premier Leagues, those FA Cups, those Champions Leagues? Chelsea fans might say they do, and that's fair. That's on you. If it's proven you've cheated to this degree, and it's an allegation, so I'm not saying it's real. You might not care and go, don't care, we were still champions. But if football doesn't recognize you anymore, what does it matter in reality? Because isn't that not what we're all fighting for? It's like footballing supremacy. We want to be seen as the biggest and most successful club. And if football fans go, but it was nonsense, you cheated, it doesn't really matter how much you won in that period. So for me, that is the conversation piece as a football fan that I am looking at here. How bad are these breaches? How many players did it cover? What did it help them achieve? How long has this been going on? We kind of have a time frame on that already. What was the impact upon rivals? What was the impact upon other teams competing against Chelsea? This matters because the point of sport is to compete against each other. A lot of people say win at all costs. I read something recently that changed my mind slightly on that. The beauty of sport is that you win something within the set rules. Bend the rules, maybe. Break them, no. In boxing, a boxer might be able to win every fight if he starts elbowing and headbutting, but he has to stick within the rules of boxing. In boxing, there's a weight limit. If you start breaking if you go into a fight 20 kilos too heavy and knock a man out, nobody goes, well done you. They go, well, you're far too big. Because you're not winning within the set rules. And in football, there's rules on the pitch, but then there are financial rules. There are regulatory rules that also must be followed. And if cheating those regulatory rules enabled you to have a better team on the pitch, it's still sporting related. And I'm not convicting Chelsea here. All I am saying is that Chelsea Football Club, and a statement, by the way, I think has just been released by Chelsea Football Club, as I live and breathe, Chelsea have said Chelsea's FC are pleased to confirm that its engagement with the FA concerning matters that were self-reported by the club is now reaching a conclusion. Well, look, I told you they would say something like that, didn't I? I knew that would come out 100%. Chelsea, they are guilty then, because that for me is an admission of guilt. We self-reported. We grassed ourselves up. So Chelsea have made these breaches, but what we, the fans, need to know is what were they and how much did it impact things? Because if it's barely had an impact, if it's a drop in the ocean, we move on. If it's been sizable, this must be discussed. This must be called out. We must look at this. And what is the punishment? Maybe it's not a big point deduction. Maybe it's not a big fine because they have self-reported. But do they keep their trophies? Do they keep their success? Do they keep that status? Because if you can cheat to be a better football team and you win the trophies off doing it, and then you're caught or self-reported and you maintain the medals, we might as well all cheat. There's no point for rules. Because if you just get to keep the medals anyway, we'll see. Maybe you agree with me. Maybe you disagree with me. I'd love to get your views on that, please, people, in the comment section below. Get yourselves liking, get yourself sharing. Big breaking news, though. Chelsea charged by the FA for 74 breaches. Give me your thoughts and your feelings in the comment section below. Let's go to what you guys are saying. I'm going to run to the comment section here. I'm just going to make a timestamp where we are on the show. The show took a completely different turn to what we were going to speak about because of this breaking news. But that's the nature of the beast. That's the way the cookie crumbles sometimes, and we have to go with the breaking news. Nobody wanted to sit here speaking about Man United looking at two midfielders when this was going on. But let's look at some comments here. Send them to non-league. I remember the club got warned by the FA they cannot go bankrupt again in the 1970s. Yeah, well, I don't want to see a club bankrupt. I don't want to see the club bankrupt because as much as I think there may be a precedent to remove titles and trophies, I don't want to see millions of football fans around the world left homeless in a footballing sense by a club being made to go bankrupt. I don't think that's a deterrent. I think depending upon the severity, so Chelsea fans don't get triggered, just be intelligent here. Depending upon the severity, removing trophies, banning them from certain competitions, points deductions, big financial fines that impact PSR. There's no point of fine that doesn't impact the PSR because they'll just the owners will just pay it off. But I don't think making them go bankrupt is the way forward. I don't think that personally. Relegate them needs to be done to send a message to everybody else. Cheat till you win is what Telf says here. Liver Wrestler says 100% right. this comment here. Let's go to some more comments here. This is from Jamie Baker. He says, Terry, we all know it's sizable. It's multiple players off the books. It's strange. It's straight up cheating. Strip them of everything they won in that time. Listen, there is definitely the possibility it's sizable, but I want to be very honest and balanced. I think it's important for me to do that in with what I'm doing here, kind of hosting this. We have to wait for the facts. So if it is sizable, half a squad as an example, then yes, punishment must happen. Punishment absolutely must happen in that way. So I'm just sending out a link here. Then I think the punishment needs to be big, but we need to understand the severity. We've been given sort of the breakdown today, but is in the amount of charges, but we don't know what they relate to specifically. I think we need specifics on that. The Chelsea Reaper says, this is how you know it's the international break. Oh, come on, Chelsea Reaper, you can't be blaming the international break. You can't be blaming the international break on why this news has come out. The FA have released it. This isn't a journalist reiterating the news. This is brand new information. Lou here says, Quest, no, if you murder someone and then own up to it, I'm still going to punish you, even though I was honest. Leniency, maybe, but not pretend it didn't happen. Lou's absolutely spot on here, and I think this is why we need to know the severity. And by the way, we're sharing the links in the group chats. We're going to share the links for people to phone in and have their say on this matter, because it is huge and it's sizable for the footballing community. There's no doubt about that. But yes, you can't forget it. If somebody admits to murder and owns up, they might get a 20-year sentence. They might get a 15-year sentence rather than 25 or 30. But it doesn't mean we're suddenly going to go, but you're not a murderer anymore because you admitted to it. You know? You're absolutely right. And they have done it. Chelsea's statement, if that's a statement that someone's just sent me is true, let me go on to Chelsea's Twitter page for them. If Chelsea are saying we're happy to have worked with them, we're happy this is coming to a conclusion, if that's a true statement, and I've not seen it on their Twitter, maybe it's on their website, then they're admitting they've done it. But we do need to know the severity. And I'll give you an example. I read this story once about a guy locally to me who got arrested for falsely imprisoning his mum. And I read the story. I was about 19. I was like, that's mad. Imagine keeping your mum a prisoner. Imagine having the audacity to keep your mum a prisoner. About a week, 2 weeks later, I was in the gym and I was chatting to some of the guys in there. And I said, did you read that story about some dude where we lived? It was on Canvey Island in Essex, who was imprisoning his mum, and he laughed. Why are you laughing? He went, I know the family. I said, oh my God, do you? He went, mate, this ain't crazy. I said, what do you mean? He goes, they were just having an argument because she was trying to kick him out. No, he was kicking her out of the house because he owned the house. And she was being a cow son. And he goes, she wanted to leave the room and he wanted to have the argument out. So he just stood in front of the door, wouldn't let her leave the room because he wanted to finish the argument. She called the police and he got arrested for falsely imprisoning her. And I was like, I've seen loads of arguments with parents, grandparents, friends, where people block each other leaving so they can finish things. And I was like, that shows how important the actual information is rather than what the arrest was for, because the arrest sounded horrendous. Do you know what I mean? So that's why we need the facts in this scenario as opposed to just the charges, for me personally. Let's go to some super chats here. Check CFC statement just issued. They confirm that these are the same charges they self-reported. Yes, they are the same charges, as I stated earlier on in the live stream. However, there's 74 breaches. We need to know how many players that relates to, how much money they circumvented. If they didn't circumvent that money, what would the lie of the land have been for that team at that time? Would they have been able to have competed in the Champions Leagues they won? Would they have had the squads they had to win the Premier Leagues, the FA Cups, the Europa Leagues? These questions must be asked. If we're not having that conversation, then what's the point? I don't want Chelsea getting into any trouble they do not deserve. Equally, if you agree to set rules to compete in, you can't break them, self-report and say, okay, guys, keep everything, nothing to see here. Equally, if it's for 3 players, it totals 30-40 million pound, but just loads of breaches, and in reality had no significant impact on them winning things, maybe there's less issue. That being said, Chelsea fans have said for years that without Eden Hazard, they didn't win Premier Leagues. If they couldn't afford to buy him, you essentially, and this isn't bitterness, but it's a fact, you stop Man United getting him. There is an argument, well, if you guys couldn't have won without him, that is what Chelsea fans have said for a decade. Well, if you didn't get him through cheating and United signed him, how different could our trophy cabinets look? How different would the world look right now if things had gone without cheating? We have to have these conversations. It must be discussed. Well, it says here that Eden Hazard rejected Arsenal for United for Chelsea. When you read the original self-report, what Chelsea reported is that Eden Hazard hadn't decided, as of yet, a huge payment of around 20 million was sent to an intermediary and an agent connected to the deal. The next day, Eden Hazard agreed to join. The working hypothesis is that the player was undecided, but the agents and intermediaries pushed him towards Chelsea because of the money that they had. Now, Hazard may not have been aware of that. Hazard maybe it's a case of the agents and intermediaries saying to Hazard, Chelsea's the place, Chelsea's the place, Chelsea's the place, Chelsea's the place. But if they're doing that because they've received an off-the-books payment of 20 million quid, it's still wrong from Chelsea. No blame to Eden Hazard. But we all know that agents and intermediaries that you trust have an influence on you. This all needs to come out. The FA and Premier League are just a joke at this point. They have zero real control over clubs constantly being exposed by billionaire owners. This is why I want regulation. And maybe it's because I'm from a financial background and you have the FCA. The FCA used to be called the FSA, I think, when I first joined the banking world. And it did a decent enough job. But you've got to remember, you had this situation where I think it was the FSA back then. I'm just trying to see. Yes, it was the FSA. And it's now the FCA. And they were regulators, but they didn't regulate shit. All the stuff that made the financial world collapse, they weren't picking up on any of it. Since then, though, they became like pit bulls. And it's so much harder now for these things to happen. Regulation needs to happen. You know, when the Premier League said to City 7-8 years ago, show us your books, and the City went, no, we don't have to. And the Premier League went, okay, because they couldn't do anything. We need that to change. We need a regulator to be able to turn up at the doors of Man United, turn up at the doors of Luton, turn up at the doors of Chelsea. We're coming in to do a review of your last 5 years, everything. And the clubs have to go, yes, sir. In the banking world, if the FCA turn up on your door and say, we're doing a thematic review on this department, the only thing the bank can say, by and large, is, yes, sir. There you go, sir. Cup of tea, sir. Shine your shoes, sir. We need that. That will stop cheating. Because if you know at any point someone can turn up and just go through your stuff, you're not going to do it. You're not going to do it. The Premier League only needs to gain a few more American owners before the 14 teams stronghold is met and they lose total control of the league. Hang on a minute. The Premier League is those clubs anyway. So you are wrong there, Ginger Biff. The Premier League is those 4 clubs. There's a group of people that manage it, but the 14 strong, they already make the rules. You know, like Richard Masters, they don't make the rules. The Premier League clubs make the rules. They might have them suggested to them by those guys, but the clubs vote for the rules. So that's always been the same. That isn't going to change. That makes no difference whatsoever. Makes no difference. This year from Sadiq, who says that it's not acceptable. The Premier League has a role in this. They are not protective. They are not protective catching those cheaters. Well, look, there's very little they can do without a regulator that allows them to go in and look at the books. Because the Premier League have no power to check the bank accounts in Switzerland or the Isle of Man of an agent. And they can't check what Roman's sending to people from his private bank accounts. They can't. Unless there's a regulator that has the rights to access all this information if you are connected to the football club. And I think every agent, every single one of their bank accounts around the world should be subject to regulation, and it should, and at any minute can be checked by the authorities. I think that should stand. Always. Fair play to the new owners for self-reporting. Big issue that this is doable and easy to hide, though. Might not come out if we didn't report. Listen, I absolutely agree. I think Clearlake and Todd Bowley here deserve a lot of credit for self-reporting, because a lot of people would have hid this under the carpet. The one thing for me that I'm very happy about is it's very unlikely that Man United have done this. Very unlikely that Man United have done this. And I'll tell you why. Because we're on the stock exchange. So we're already regulated. Our books are already open for investigation. So it doesn't mean we haven't. I pray that we haven't, because listen, you see me come out and condemn City and Chelsea. If it's my football club that's done this, I won't do what a lot of Chelsea fans and City fans do, which is, even if we're guilty, I don't care. If we're guilty, I'm ripping into every fucker that knew, because you have essentially taken away our history. You have taken away our history. And as much as publicly people might argue they haven't, they would. Chelsea's official statement here says Chelsea is pleased to confirm the engagement. I've read that bit out. It says the club ownership group completed the purchase of the club in May 22 during a thorough due diligence process. Prior to the completion, the ownership became aware of potentially incomplete financial reporting concerning historical transactions and other potential breaches of FA rules. Immediately upon the completion of the purchase, the club self-reported these matters to all relevant regulators, including the FA. The club has demonstrated unprecedented transparency during this process, including by giving comprehensive access to the club's files and historic data. This will continue working We will continue working collaboratively with the FA to conclude this matter as swiftly as possible. To wish a place on record our gratitude to the FA for their engagement with the club. Listen, I'd say well done to Chelsea. That there is phenomenal. That there from this new ownership. And that's also important, by the way. And I'll give you an example. Imagine you go into a restaurant and you get food poisoning and the staff are horrible. Imagine I buy that restaurant 3 years later, renovate it, get new staff, and I say to you, fancy coming down to my restaurant? No, I got food poisoning in there once. It's different ownership, bruv. Different people running it. Same building, right? Even the same name, but it's different. Well done to Chelsea for reporting and being transparent. And that's probably why they've ended up with 74 charges. They probably found lots of this. Okay? Doesn't change my mind. The new ownership get massive credit. We have to know the severity and the impact upon your team. What did it help you win? What did it help you achieve? Should these things be stripped? I'm not worried about how big the fine is. I'm not worried about how big the transfer ban is. I'm more worried about what did it help you achieve? And I thought long and hard about this with Chelsea and City circumstances. It's like when a boxer gets done for doping, I don't care about their money being taken off them. I care about their titles they won with it being stripped. When a 100-meter sprinter gets done for doping, I don't care that, oh, they made £5 million off the back of that win. Great, keep your money. What I care about is who do they steal a medal from? That's the bit for me that's more important than any of this. So listen, I say this, well done to Chelsea. Brilliant that they came out and did something. A lot of people wouldn't have done. A lot of people would have hid this. But I think the point remains, we as football fans, and I'm sure you agree with this, Jem, we need to know the severity. Like I've said, if it's a grain of sand in the Sahara, then fair enough. We'll have to wait and see, though. I know David's coming on in a minute, but the Chelsea fans, I will say to David, because I know David will smile backstage, bare noisy Chelsea fans in our group chat are quiet, bruv. And they're always busy. Where are they gone? I know why they're gone. Finished. They got nothing to say to us today. I'm going to share the link in the live chat if you want to phone in and have your say on the show. We haven't got too long left, so we'll take some calls. I've got to go to London today, but we will be discussing this later on Six-Sided. Don't worry about that, because we'll be getting big fan opinion on it, on that one. Let's pin that live chat. David's here with me now, though, to have his say on this groundbreaking, massive moment in Premier League football history for his club. David, welcome back to the show, mate. Obviously, you obviously knew that something was coming because you self-reported, but 74 breaches is fairly significant. I know you love your club. I know you're tribal to a certain degree, but I also know you've got a brain. Your club is self-reported. It's basically admitted in its own statement that if all these charges are true, you're going to be found guilty of them. But what's your initial reaction to this volume of breaches being found against your club?
Well, I think if you're a Chelsea fan who's like clued in, you kind of knew this was coming, because this isn't, like, to most Chelsea fans, this isn't new news. We kind of knew about this already. It's a shame that we've cheated, because if we're self-reporting, then we've done something wrong. So we've clearly cheated. But I do think the current owners deserve a lot of credit for being transparent about it, because we could have easily just hid this under the rug and never would have been found out, because these charges are 10 years old. Well, I can't remember the I think it was like, what was it?
So the majority of them started in, I think, 010 to the majority are between 010 and 2016, but there are some that go back as far as 2009 up to 2022. But the majority are in that 5. It's no surprise the majority are in the period where FFP and PSR came in.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like we've cheated, and the owners deserve a lot of credit for coming clean about that, because it wasn't like people found out about. It's not like the Premier League found it and was like, "Oh, you've cheated." It was, no, we got bought in, and we got bought, and then our owners looked back at the things and went, "Something's not right here. We should probably tell the Premier League about it." The one thing I would say is that I don't think our owners are stupid. And I think our owners have gone to the Premier League and have said, "We found this evidence that implicates us in this. However, because we're telling you about this and you wouldn't have found this out, I don't think we're going to like lose titles or get stripped of medals. I think it is just going to be like a heavy fine, and that will probably be it. How much we cheated is, again, that'll be interesting to see if they ever let us see it. But one thing, I don't think we're the only club that's done this, but if we're going to be everyone's just going to label us as cheats, and cool, if you want to do that. But I think it's one of those things where we've been honest about our situation, and I think we do deserve a bit of credit for it, even though we have done things that are wrong. And what is funny about it is all those people that sat there and said that, once again, Roman was the perfect owner. He clearly wasn't, because if he's breaking rules, then that goes against competitive competition. So,
well, this is the thing for me. Look, I think you guys have done the right thing, and I've already said it earlier on the show. I think your new owners need tremendous credit for being brave enough, because look, we live in this world where I know how Chelsea fans feel by and large about Roman. He is so loved, and I'll tell you one of the crazy reasons he's so loved behind the scenes, because some people hypocrisize themselves. I'm not going to say it on camera because it's too emotive. They love him, and when you guys first self-report, there's always that view that this could backfire on the new owners. Why are you grassing up the man that essentially made Chelsea the gigantic club they are? At the same time, I do view it the other way, and maybe it's because I'm objective. If this resulted in the worst case scenario, which was titles were stripped, legacies were removed, history was rewritten, then Roman is the criminal here. Roman is the villain in this, not Clearlake and not Todd Bowley for reporting it, because you're actually smart to report it too. The regulators are coming, and at some point, and it might not be for 10 years, this stuff's coming, and you're not going to be the only team. This is what I guarantee. Chelsea will not be the only team that have been making off-the-book payments to... the only team I'm 100% guaranteed haven't is Arsenal. They don't spend enough. They don't sell enough. Like, they're the only ones who I think there's no chance you've done it. But everybody else, certainly, I think is somewhere in the region of being in the dock for some type of cheating here. For me personally, I think that's the case. Andrew, what are you saying about this, mate? Obviously, not great news to see these 74 breaches and charges today, but what's your initial gut reaction to it, brother?
Well, it all goes back to that, like the self-reporting and that report that we basically put like 100 million aside in case we get like a fine or something like that. Do you know what I mean? But I think like I need to like look at it deeply, like, because the big number is obviously 74, and it's like with the Man City 115, when you actually look at some of the things they're charged with, you laugh at them. So I need to like see what they charge if they didn't buy someone a coffee at a restaurant or something like that. They didn't put on an expense report or something like that. But No, just going back to the time period, I was remembering some of the transfer windows, and I'm going, was it really worth it to do the illegal payments? Because some of those players we bought were really crap. Do you know what I mean? So it was like, was it really worth it? some of them, but no, I think it'd probably be a fine and like a suspended sentence or whatever it is, like maybe a suspended transfer ban or something like that is the highest they can go, something like that. It depends really, because they've just settled with City for the that was Premier League, well, this is FA. Sorry, I don't know what they can do, what they're going to do. But like I said, we need like a more detailed thing of what the 74 are about, you know, and stuff like that. I think it's good that they reported it. Like you said, when they first, I'm sure Dave remember when they first reported it, the ownership got a lot of slack from like you said, from our own fan base going, "How dare you report?" It's like, how dare you report a crime?
Well, we live in a really weird. I always say this: you've got to give not credit, but isn't it amazing that criminals and villains and mobsters and gangsters have convinced the world that telling on bad people is a bad thing?
Yeah,
isn't it amazing? We've created a world, right? That I'm not talking about telling on your mate because he snuck out of the classroom 10 minutes early, right? That's different. But he's like, you're a bad man. Why? You told the police it was Johnny that stabbed up Rick. That makes you a scumbag. What, more than the guy that stabs? I've never understood that logic. That logic's always been crazy to me personally, but that's just me. But let me ask you Chelsea fans a question before I go to the Gooner on the panel. This play. We all know that if this is a drop in the ocean, it's a handful of players. And as you say, 50 of these breaches are you took a agent out for dinner, but you didn't declare it and things like that. Because that also can happen in the financial world. Sometimes you'd see, Barclays Bank hit with 100 breaches. And sometimes it was like 80 of them were taking people out for drinks and not declaring who you were out with. So you are right. So we know if that happens, people will just go, fine, let's move on. If this is significant, though, in the sense of, and I'll paint a hypothetical, you've built half a squad, and we look at the names and we're like, that squad helped you win league titles, FA Cups, Champions Leagues. Do you think it would be therefore unfair to potentially remove those titles from your history if these breaches and these broken rules have led to you having a squad that won these trophies? What would your reaction to it be if the FA took them away from you in that scenario?
The issue I have is that most of that squad that I see, you always break it down into two halves of Roman, like from when he started to like the first Champions League thing. And I think when we won the first Champions League, that most of that squad was built in for like 7-8 years or something like that. So we're talking about the things afterwards, like the couple of league titles, the one under Mourinho, the one under Conte and stuff like that. I don't know.
UCL.
What?
And a Champions League.
Well, we have
in one Champions League.
2021. Right? Baku, yeah, possibly. I don't. Like I said, it's how far they've got the guts to punish. We see how far they don't really have the guts sometimes to punish the clubs, do they, Terry? They're rather like fine them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's really is there a precedence for this? Do you know what I mean? Like in previous cases and stuff like that. What's the precedence for this? And like, is there an appeal? Like, will Chelsea have an appeal process as well, whatever they're charged with, or are they just going to settle and go, yeah, we'll take the fine, we'll take maybe like a January transfer ban or something like that, or a suspended transfer ban or something like that, and then just move on and try and get it out of the way, because I think that's what both sides will try and look at, unless it's really, really like you say. But that's why we need more details about what they've actually. Yeah.
Well, because I look at it, a working hypothesis, a working thesis is that Clear Lake, and that I think I've done the right thing by saying, look, let's report this because eventually it's going to come out, and they may have made a conscious decision to do that. Equally, they want to sell this business. They've got investors. They want to sell this business in X amount of years, and if imagine they build it up and make it more valuable, and then in 10 years' time this comes out, it would crush the valuations. They've done it for those two reasons. But equally, from Clear Lake and Todd Bowley's point of view, I think they're more concerned about the financial fines and punishments now than they would be old titles being stripped that they weren't in charge of winning, because their view is this. Imagine because you've got to weigh up from their perspective for a moment, because they're the ones negotiating this. what would be worse for Clear Lake? A 2-year transfer ban and £100 million fine, or a Prem and an FA Cup taken away? I think for Clear Lake, the financial and transfer ban is worse for them than taking away old medals, because that's going to hinder us growing the football team. So, look, I do think you're right, though. It depends on the severity. I've said it the whole way through the stream, and I'll keep saying it. That's the hard bit here. We don't know how big these breaches. We know how many breaches. We don't know how big they are, and I think that's fundamental. Goon, the Aussie Goon is with us here, and by the way, big up to Rune here, whose birthday is turned 50 today. Big up yourself, my friend. Thanks for the super chat. Aussie Gooner, obviously massive news. What you saying, bro?
Look, I think it's a great move from the current Chelsea owners, because they've walked into a minefield, and instead of trying to cover it up, they said, well, we didn't know anything. They're going to play the innocent game, which they probably were, and they are. And it's like, well, sorry, we've just found out. We're doing the right thing. Don't punish us. Don't punish us too hard. You can't blame the new owners for what the previous owners have done. And I think the FA are going to look at it that way. It's calling a spade a spade. They're not going to push. They're not going to push too hard on them. Chelsea might get maybe a slap on the wrist with a fine, and maybe 2 transfer windows, maybe January and the next season, and that'll be it. Whilst they strip them of Premier League titles and such, honestly, as much as even if it was 6 or 7 players that would have helped them win UCLs, win Premier Leagues and yada yada, I don't see the FA doing it. Honestly, I look at the FA and they're toothless. They did nothing with City, and I do believe they'll do nothing with Chelsea. I think they got a lot of bark, but no bite. That's in my opinion. And I think everybody in the chat is saying, oh, push Chelsea out, this and that, but we all know the FA won't do it. Chelsea to the Premier League mean a lot of money. So they're going to be looking at that too, and that's a fact. Let's be honest, guys. We're all sitting here. Chelsea means money to the Premier League. In my opinion, it's probably going to be maybe 2 windows and a heavy fine. But for them to get stripped of titles, I don't see it happening. As much as I would love for that to happen, if the charges were leading towards winning Premier League titles, and I mean, it'd have to be at least 6 or 7 players. It'd have to be pretty much a full squad for me to say, yeah, look, it was big enough to impact them so positively that no other team could compete. And then you could think about that. But I don't think the FA would do it. In my opinion, I don't see it. It's a dream. You know what I mean, Terry?
Yeah, no, listen, this is a great train of thought, because I also think that maybe a way the FA is going to look at this is, if we can be lenient with Chelsea because they cooperated, maybe this is a way of clearing house. Maybe everybody else comes forward and admits their mistakes and their problems. We give them a little fine and a slap on the wrist, and we draw a line, and we can create a scenario where at least we know moving forward, everything and everybody's clean. And that would also change fan and club's reaction. So for instance, we're as fans, the fan in us, I want to see Chelsea stripped, I want to see City stripped, I want to see United stripped. There's a fan in us. But if it turned out that all of our clubs, and I'm going to give you another banking example, and I know it winds some people up, but it's true. When I worked in the business and corporate part, I'd only been there about 2 months. So I was very lucky. I'd done no accounts. I'd opened nothing. So I wasn't subjected to this. But I went in, and about 2 months in, I was listening to a conversation. I was at some meeting, and these guys were talking about how they were like opening real accounts, but people were sort of breaking the rules to get the accounts open because it was the only way they got their bonuses. So an account would be open, but someone had to deposit £1,000 in the account for it to be active for you to get your bonus. Equally, your area and your part of the country you worked in, the southeast, the west, whatever it was, you had to do that for it to count as one open. So it would go on the MI page. So your area could say, we've opened 7 new accounts this week. And there was pressure right from the top to the bottom. And what started happening is members of staff were taking £1,000 of their own money and paying it in, and then logging into the customers' accounts and transferring it back to their own, right? Because it was their money. Stupid and ridiculous. But everyone was doing it. It became like a Spanish custom that everybody did because everybody else did it. And some idiot admitted he did it in front of a regional corporate director. There was over half the workforce got suspended. In the end, long story short, there was all these emails that started coming out, though, from the most senior people in the bank, putting pressure down the line to do it. So in the end, they brought everybody back in. People got lost their jobs. They brought them back in. They drew a line. Everyone got put on training and said from this point forward, no one else does it. But everybody got their jobs back because there was this realization that if we start punishing one massively, you're going to end up punishing everybody. So maybe there's a train of thought here to say, let's give Chelsea a 20 million fine. Let's let everyone know if they cooperate, this is what's going to happen. I wouldn't then be surprised to see 5, 6, 7, 8 other teams come forward and say, oh, we went for a box in the stories cupboard, right? And we found this paperwork, and that's how it will be done. So that is also the other side of this, which I think we all have to be very, very mindful of. You could be right there. This super chat here says from Gav, let me put this up on the screen. He says, and I quote, that UEFA have already fined us for these issues. So we are talking FA EPL punishment. Now, I think what the UEFA fined you for last year was losing money under the Clear Lake regime. This is a completely different scenario. I suppose that's the other. UEFA won't be able to do nothing anyway. It's going to be time barred. It's got to be time barred if City's was. So, but it's a very different scenario to that. David, do you think this is why your recruiting changed?
No, I think they had a different plan entirely. But again, I think that the way we're doing things currently is better than the way we're doing things in the past. But that again, that's my opinion on it. But, just sign world-class players and you win trophies. Oh yeah.
Well, it certainly shows why you've gone down a different route in terms of how do I say this in the right way? You've the selling and how you're operating to bring in additional money, because maybe Clear Lake looks at it and well, we can't operate the way Roman was doing it because
Terry, I'm going to be so mad if we paid extra agencies for Baba Rahman and Matt Miazga in 2015. I'll be so pissed.
See, but I don't think it's extra. I don't think you paid extra. I think when this comes out, what you've done is instead of paying, so it's not even about. So it isn't. It isn't. So did the agents want Hazard to go to Chelsea? Probably. Did they think it was the right place for him? Probably. Could Chelsea, though, afford the agent fees? No. Therefore, he would have ended up going to Man United because the agents would have gone. Because this is the problem with agents. Agents go, if we ain't paying our fees, our player ain't coming. We know that exists. So that's where I don't think it's about paying more. It's you couldn't pay it through your books. Because if you go back to that period, you guys were turning over £200 or £300 million a year less than the Man Uniteds of this world. The money, even with our debts, we still had more real money than you, if that made sense. So I don't think it's the fact. I don't think you've paid shit players' agents 30 million quid to come to the club or anything. It would have just been, well, we'll pay your fee, but I think a lot of it will be Roman himself has paid it. And because they say incomplete accounts. So they probably found reports where they owed 10 million agent fee. And then they're checking the transactions, and the club hasn't sent anyone 10 million quid in agent fees.
But like you said, they can't, like you said earlier before we came on, they can't ask him. They can't go into his own bank accounts, can they? Do you know what I mean? It's like they can't.
No.
So it's like, what would happen then? It would just be like they can't answer what happened to the payment without speaking to Roman. He's not going to, tell us what happened to that payment.
One thing that is true as well is that at least our new owners seem to be more on top of finances, so I have less worry about them. Like
you'd hope so with their.
Do you know what I mean? Like you can't be self-reporting yourself and then also breaking the rules. That seems a bit. You know what I mean? That seems a bit stupid.
Like,
I think with the rules that are coming into place soon, there was a chess move. It's like we found out the previous owner has really screwed up. What do? Innocent. Let's just point the finger at ourselves and say, we just found out. What do we do? It's a smart move because at least now, just like Terry's saying, here's a line drawn. Everyone starts fresh. And I know I'm seeing in the comments, Everton didn't get away with it, and this is unfair. But it seems that the teams that are higher up the table get away with a lot more than the teams that are lower on the table.
Wasn't Everton's FFP as well?
It
was points deduction. They got a point deduction, and they were getting threatened with relegation.
No, but what I mean is theirs is FFP, right, or PSR issues or something like that, right?
Yeah, there's PSR issues.
Yeah,
my bad.
Yeah, so same with I think Forest as well, right? So it's like people, you need to. This is actually the worst thing to be charged.
Well, this is also it. And we've always got to look at the details. Did you see the Chelsea story that came out the other day? Again, whenever I speak about these, there's a group of Chelsea fans. Why are you speaking on it? I think it's important for people to understand. So your fine from UEFA the money you pay won't impact FFP. So say you are over the loss limit, but it's because of that fine, they'll deduct it. So you won't get in second trouble, which is fair actually. However, there's the second part of that ruling, which everyone's ignored, which is by the end of your trading accounts, 2027, you've got to break even. You can't lose a penny. And that I look at that, and maybe that's the kind of thing that the Prem will do. It'll be, well, you'll get this fine, you'll do this, but you have to operate in these restrictions. And that will restrict you guys from spending unless you're able to keep selling players at the rate you are. Because UEFA, for instance, doesn't recognize the selling of the women's team. They don't allow you to
recognize the hotels and that.
Yeah, the hotels and that. So you actually look at it, and the Chelsea financial race is as good as a title race. It's all will they or will they not? You guys should set up someone should set up like one of those, the things they used to do for charity, like the totality things. How much do they need to sell to reach the limit so they don't breach? Like, it's just set one of them up. It'd be a laugh. We can all watch it every
week. Need to see how much our under 19 teams worth we sold the women's team.
They hit their limit, and all of a sudden balloons and shit fly everywhere, and the whole streamers fall down. We paid it. We've only got 6 players in the squad, but it's okay.
It's all right. Yeah. This here from T1 says, isn't this the same as buying a car from a police auction and then the police trying to charge you for the tickets? That no, the other way around though. So no, it's the other way around. It's the other way around. So if you bought a car off the police in a police thing, and then the tickets arrived at your door when you didn't own it, you don't have to pay them. So you're not accountable for any crime that was committed in that car before you owned it. You're not going to be charged with those. You're not going to have to pay those fines, and you're not going to get those points on your license.
That's a genius defense. We could go.
It's a fair share.
Well, it's new ownership. If Roman buys another club, you need to punish the club that he buys in the future with.
That's why I actually think if it's Sevilla, I think it's more likely things get stripped than you're punished now, because clearly they can say, well, don't punish us and what we're doing for Chelsea Football Club. We've helped you. Just take away. Do you know what I mean? Maybe you guys get to pick. Maybe you get to pick 2 trophies you've got to lose. Because the FA
Carabaos and Community Shields.
Yeah.
Terry,
hang on. No. You didn't win any. You didn't win.
You just won trophies. Look at him. Look at him.
No, you didn't win. You didn't win any Community Shields in that period. So you've got you can only pick 1 from each. You've got 2 Prems, 2 FA Cups, and 2 Caraboki Cups. Which ones are you getting rid of?
Take the Carabao Cups. Take the
Carabaos and the FAs. The Carabaos and the FAs, they can go.
Right, what would you rather lose? What would you rather lose, right? I'm the FA. I'm the FA, and like David, you get to decide, right?
We're making deals. Shit.
Do you lose?
So is this how the FA works? Let's talk. Let's talk deals.
It's all your. Yeah, they do it this way. All of your domestic trophies in that time are 2 FA Cups and 2 League Cups, or 1 of your Prems.
No, all the domestics can
go.
All
the domestic cups.
All the domestics can go.
I don't blame them. I don't blame them.
I tell you. By the way, everyone laughing out there, by the way, I mean, that was a bit of a joke, but anyone laughing out there, by the way, be mindful your club could be next. I would keep, even as a United fan, I'm quite confident because we're on the stock exchange that less of this is likely to have happened, less likely. But still keep your powder dry, man. Keep that powder dry because you don't want to be... one of them
I know Liverpool and Arsenal have got nothing to worry about. We ain't spent nothing.
Yeah, very unlikely.
Nothing.
Yeah,
We suck.
You'd have had no reason to have done off the book payments when you were so far within FFP and PSR regulations. Yeah, you've got nothing to worry about probably. Terry didn't have this energy for what? You can say I didn't have this energy for Man City. I said exactly the same thing. You lying swine. As well. By the way, you can go back to content of mine from, when all the stuff came out about the clubs that covered up paedophilia. I made a very bold claim in that. I said at the time, if it turns out my club's covered it up for decades, I said I'm going to be harsher than any fan of the other clubs. I will stop supporting Man United. I couldn't support a club that covered up the exploitation of children for 20 years. I don't care what it means. I would walk away. I wouldn't buy a single item from them ever again. I'd watch football, but I wouldn't be. I'd step away from the club. How? My view. No one has to echo it. How could you ever support an institution that did that? I can't, but that's just me. So when you talk about being hard, by the way, if Man United did this, you watch me going harder than I do on other football clubs. I always punish my children more than I'd ever go at another kid for being naughty. Like when it's your own, you should be much harsher than if it's somebody else's. That's always my view on these things. So that's just me. But look, I want to thank all of you for tuning in. I've got to head to London. So later, I'll be live later today for Six Sided, but I'll be up in the London studio for that one. So we're live at around 5 p.m. This is going to redirect you. I'm sure this topic is going to dominate that as well as us going into Premier League predictions. So if you are watching the beginning of this show, I was doing Prem predictions today, talking about Man United, but that all changed as Chelsea were charged 74 times by the Premier League, by the FA, sorry, not the Premier League. Until next time, take care, goodbye, God bless, and we're going to see you all again very, very soon. Peace.